Have you ever wondered how embroidered patches are made? I'm here to show you. One of the most popular topics that I cover over on TikTok is how to make embroidered hat patches. Obviously, people are wanting to know how, and I'm here to show you step by step. The method that I use is beginner friendly. All you need is a single needle machine, and it's super easy to do once you get the hang of it. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Shelby. I run a small at-home embroidery business, and I'm also creating content to educate others so that they can do the same. I also love crafting in my spare time, so if you like crafts, stick around. This channel will be full of different crafts and tutorials and embroidery business content. If you'd like to support my channel, I will leave a link down below. And as a thank you, I will provide you with the file for the exact patch that I'm going to be making today. You can make it as many times as you want to practice on, do different materials, things like that, and play around with it. This is only going to be available for my YouTube viewers as a thank you for being here and watching this video. So let's get straight into it. Let's start off with the materials that you're going to need for this project. As for stabilizer, you're going to need to start off with a tearaway. Any tearaway is fine. I get this on Amazon. And then I have two options for you for a water-soluble stabilizer. The first is just your typical water-soluble. It looks like a thin fabric. It just melts away with water. That can come from Amazon. And then the next is a plastic water-soluble stabilizer, but you don't actually even need to use water for this. Once the satin border is done around the edge, you can just pop it out of this. I get this from Super Punch, so I will leave all the links down below. I have heard of people getting some sort of heavy duty plastic from like Home Hardware or something like that. If you want to look into that, that's also an option. You're gonna need some basting spray, whatever color thread you need for your specific design. And then as for the patch, I like to do my patches on some sort of material. Sometimes people have done patches over a fill stitch. My favorite option for patches is a laminated back polyester twill. So this one is actually called Super Twill. I also get this from Super Punch, which is a Canadian brand if you're interested. That comes in a large roll, so it lasts a long time. You could use some craft felt. I would recommend doubling it up though, just so it's a little bit sturdier. You could use some cotton. I would recommend using some heat and bond or basting it to a couple layers of cutaway stabilizer just to give it a little more structure. Along those same lines, you can use a heat transfer vinyl. This is specifically a glitter one from Sizer. So you could iron this onto a couple pieces of cutaway stabilizer to give this some structure as well. And my last option for you would be a faux leather. It has kind of a canvas back and then it's got that leather look on the front. You can get this in all sorts of different patterns and colors. As for machine, a single needle will do you just fine. So whatever you have. If you're just doing one patch, a 4x4 hoop is plenty enough. Sometimes when you start doing more, you can batch them 4 patches in the 5x7 or on a multi-needle on an even bigger hoop. You could bulk embroider a ton of patches. Work with what you've got. You can make something really great. So our first step is going to be to get our material for our patch cut out to the exact size that we need it. This allows you to minimize the waste of the material you're using. And if you're making bulk patches, it gives you the chance to use, say, maybe a different material for each patch. You don't have to do them all in one sheet of the same color. If you'd rather just cut your patch out kind of applique style on the water soluble stabilizer, you can do that too, but I prefer to get my patch cut out to the exact size now, less risk of cutting your water soluble later. So first we're just going to get some tearaway stabilizer hooped. So the patch I'm going to be making today is about 3.5 by 2 inches. So I'm going to cut out a piece of my fabric and add about 1 inch to the height and width. So for this one, I'm going to cut out 4.5 by 3. Once I have my material, I'm just going to float that on the hoop and go trace our cut line on the machine. We're going to do a trace, make sure that that needle is on the material the whole time. And if you've added 1 inch to the height and width, it should be totally fine. The color for this doesn't matter because we're going to be cutting the stitches anyways, so none of the thread will be showing. Pop that out of your hoop and you can just cut right on those stitches. So you're actually popping the stitches. Make sure you're not going any smaller though and going into the center of the patch or your border might not cover. This allows you to be so precise and ensure that you won't have any of the edges of the material sticking out from your satin border. So you can just take off any of the thread that's left kicking around, and that tearaway is just garbage. Now we have our perfect cut patch. Now that we have our patch perfectly cut out, it's time to run a placement stitch and baste our patch right onto those lines. So your patch will be in the perfect spot to embroider. Make sure that it's directly lined up with the stitches. Now is when you're going to hoop up your water-soluble stabilizer. I'm going to use the plastic one today to show you how you can pop it out. So I'm just going to cut this to the hoop size. I'm using my regular embroidery hoop. I will tighten it as much as I can, tighten it with a screwdriver, and then put a T-pin along the long edge on both sides so that it doesn't pull through. The magnetic hoop though is strong enough that you don't need to do any of that extra stuff. Make sure that it's drum-like. Now again, the color of the placement stitch doesn't matter because you won't be seeing this. You'll see that the next stitch to run is the exact same size and shape, and that will show us where we're going to place our patch. I'm going to put some basting spray on the back and secure it down. There we go. Place it exactly along those stitches. Now, my secret to getting a really sturdy patch is to actually sandwich 2 pieces of cutaway onto the back of the hoop, and then I run a zigzag or an applique stitch around to hold the layers of the sandwich together. This is the perfect opportunity to use some of that wasted cutaway that's in your scrap bin. I never throw out large scraps, so I'll just go over to my bin, grab a piece of cutaway, fold it in half, and then tape this to the bottom side of the hoop. And I'm gonna flip my hoop over and take that doubled up layer of cutaway and just tape it on the back. If you have painter's tape or masking tape, something that comes off easily, that will be perfect because you just need to hold it down until that zigzag stitch runs. There we go. Now we're at the point where I would change whatever thread you have on to whatever the color of your satin border is going to be. This will be close to the edge of your patch, and you don't want any crazy colored thread peeking through. We are gonna run this zigzag stitch. Once we run this zigzag or sandwich stitch, you can actually cut off the excess cutaway as close as you can to the stitches without actually cutting the stitches. And make sure you don't poke through your water-soluble stabilizer. All right, as you can see, we have a perfect zigzag holding that patch down. Now we can flip to the back, take this tape off. There we have it. Now we're all ready to go and do the inside of the patch. Now that our fabric is totally secured, you can go ahead and run whatever you're gonna do on the inside of the patch. I find that the zigzag holds it steady enough that you don't need to run your border before you do all of your inner work. Go ahead and change up your threads to whatever you want for your particular design. Now that we have everything done on the inside of our patch, it's time to just stitch the satin border and then we'll get to finishing. I just went through and trimmed up some of the little threads that were out. Our patch is done. As you can see, it's almost popping out itself anyways. So all you have to do is push on it and you have a patch. that you did not need to cut around the stitches at all. So easy, so thick and durable, no puckering or wrinkling within the patch, and I love this method. The last thing we have to talk about is finishing. If you did the plastic method, you could take some water to just get any of the extra plastic bits out of the edge. If you did the other water-soluble stabilizer, I usually just take a Q-tip and go around until the patch pops out. Then you're gonna wanna let it dry for however long it takes. If the patch is really wet, I usually let it dry under my heat press, not on, just with some pressure so it dries flat. But once it's dry, all you do is take your lighter, quickly singe around the edges to lock in that border, and you're finished. Then it's ready to be sewn on or heat pressed on to whatever you want. I'm gonna quickly show you how to add an adhesive to the back, or if you wanna sew on, no need, you can just go right from there. The patch is already stiff enough that you don't need to adhere anything to make it stiff. I've tried Heat and Bond Ultra, I've tried generic adhesives, and honestly, they suck. I would not give my customer anything that had Heat and Bond on it because it's probably gonna fall off. The adhesive I found that I really like is from a leatherette company called Hide Bond. So I do use their leatherette for engraving and leather patches, but they sell their adhesive by the roll. All you have to do is pretend this is some parchment paper. You just put some parchment paper down, lay your patch down with the back side facing up. There's a shiny side and a white wax paper kind of side. You lay the shiny adhesive side down so that the white side is sticking up. I use my mini heat press, but you could use any household iron. You just iron on for maybe 10 seconds. Not enough to cook the adhesive off, but just to adhere it. Once your patch is adhered on the adhesive, let it cool, and then I just take my scissors and cut around as close to the stitches as I can without cutting the stitches, and then you'll have an adhesive backed patch. If you guys want a video in the future of my exact heat press settings, how I get these onto hats, I can show you that, because that's the main thing I use these patches for, is for hats. If you're sewing it on, it's really easy to sew these onto garments, bags, jackets, things like that. If you're sewing it onto a hat, it's much trickier. It's doable, but you do need to flatten the hat and it warps the hat a lot. So I wouldn't suggest, unless you have, I think they're called like a post bed leather sewing machine. Let me know if you have any questions. I will try and leave all of the links below for all of the products I used. I'm going to be making this exact patch on a few other materials just so you can kind of see what that looks like, and I will be sure to pop that footage in after this. Hello, this is Shelby from the future. I made all the patches with all the different materials I mentioned so that I can show you how they turn out. So first we have our polyester twill, which I showed you guys. And then we have our cotton, one piece of cotton fabric basted onto 2 layers of cutaway for the top, craft felt, 2 layers of craft felt. This is our faux leather vinyl, just 1 layer. And then this is our heat transfer glitter vinyl, ironed onto 2 layers of cutaway. All right, so with all of these patches, I used the exact same method, 2 layers of cutaway on the back, and the exact same process. Now with the super twill, I did the plastic stabilizer, and then with all 4 of these, I just did the regular water-soluble stabilizer. They're all thick, stiff. You don't need to iron any adhesive onto the back to make them stiff. They're already perfect. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting my channel. If you want to get this file for this exact patch, I'll leave a link below. I will upload it in a zip folder with all of the different embroidery machine extensions. If you don't see your specific extension that you need in that zipped file, just send me an email and I will gladly get that to you. Thanks everyone. See you in the next video.